The traditional wedding march music swelled, filling the small, ornate chapel with a sound that was supposed to mark the beginning of my forever. The guests rose from the wooden pews, their faces beaming with joy and anticipation. I could see my mother dabbing her eyes with a lace handkerchief in the front row, and my father looked prouder than I had ever seen him. But as I gripped my bouquet of white roses, the stems felt like thorns digging into my palms. Hidden carefully among the petals, pressed against the velvet wrap, was my smartphone. My heart was pounding against my ribs, not with the flutter of love, but with the heavy, sickening thud of dread. Alaric stood at the altar, waiting for me. He looked perfect in his charcoal tuxedo, his hair styled just the way I used to love. He smiled as I approached, that charming, crooked smile that had melted my heart for 3 years. But as I looked at him, the image blurred. I didn't see the man I loved anymore. I saw a stranger. I saw the timestamps on a screen. I saw the lies. As I reached the altar and took my place beside him, the music faded into silence. He reached for my hand, his palm warm and dry. I let him take it, but my fingers were ice cold. I leaned in slightly, just enough for him to hear, and whispered, "If you could Google vows, I can Google truth." He looked confused, but the ceremony moved on. I took a breath. I knew what I had to do. "I think we're done here," I thought to myself. My name is Rosalind, and this was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. I had planned this wedding for 18 months. Every napkin, every flower, every song was chosen with care. Alaric and I were the couple everyone envied. We finished each other's sentences. We liked the same movies. We were perfect, or so I thought. But the universe has a funny way of revealing the truth when you least expect it. It happened just this morning, hours before I put on my dress. It wasn't a dramatic investigation. It was a mistake. A simple, stupid mistake that shattered my world. I was in our hotel suite getting ready. The room was chaotic with bridesmaids and hairspray. I was looking for my charger and I saw Alaric's phone sitting on the bedside table. It buzzed. Usually I would never look. I respected his privacy just as he respected mine. But the screen lit up and the preview message was right there, staring at me in bright, undeniable letters. It said, "Can't wait for tonight, winking face." My stomach dropped. I froze. Maybe it was a wrong number. Maybe it was a prank. But then I saw the name at the top of the message. It wasn't his best man and it wasn't a cousin. It was Leora, his coworker. The woman he told me not to worry about. The woman he said was just one of the guys. My mind flashed back to 6 hours before the ceremony. The suite was quiet because the bridesmaids had gone down to get coffee. Alaric was in the shower. I could hear the water running and him humming a tune, completely unbothered. I stood by the nightstand, my hand trembling as I reached for the phone. I knew his passcode. It was his birthday. I typed it in, 0412. The phone unlocked, and I felt like I was trespassing, but the knot in my gut told me I had to know. I opened the messaging app. There was a thread with Leora that went back months. I scrolled, and with every swipe of my finger, a piece of my heart chipped away. The messages were explicit. They were intimate. They talked about things Alaric and I had never even tried. "I love how you look in that red dress," he wrote last week. "She's boring compared to you," he wrote 2 days ago. I felt bile rise in my throat. I wanted to throw the phone across the room. But then I saw something that made me stop breathing. He had sent her screenshots of my texts to him. Texts where I told him I was stressed about the wedding planning, or where I told him I loved him. And below the screenshots, they were laughing. The betrayal twisted my stomach into knots. I sat on the edge of the bed, reading their commentary on my life. "She is so dramatic about these flowers," Alaric had typed. Leora had replied, "She's so traditional. You deserve better than that stuck-up prude." Tears blurred my vision, hot and stinging. I felt foolish. I felt small. I had spent months trying to make this day perfect for him, and the whole time he was mocking me with the woman he was actually sleeping with. I kept reading, needing to see the bottom of the well. Near the end of the thread, there was a message from Alaric sent just last night. "After today, I'll find a way to end it. I just need to get through the wedding so my parents don't kill me. Then we can be together properly." He was planning to leave me. He was going to marry me, let me sign the papers, let me think we were starting a life, and then dump me once the dust settled. I dropped the phone on the bed as if it were burning hot. I couldn't breathe. The door to the suite opened, and Elsie, my maid of honor, walked in holding 2 lattes. She took one look at me crying on the floor and dropped the cups. Elsie rushed over to me, avoiding the spilled coffee, and wrapped her arms around my shoulders. "Rosalind, what happened? Is it cold feet?" I couldn't speak. I just pointed at the phone on the bed. Elsie grabbed it. I watched her eyes widen as she scrolled, her jaw clenched. "That dirtbag," she hissed. She looked at me, her face fierce and protective. "Rosalind, listen to me. We are leaving. We are packing your bags and we are getting out of here. He doesn't deserve to see you in that dress." I wiped my face, a strange calm settling over me. "No," I said, my voice sounding hollow. "If I leave, he spins the story. He'll tell everyone I got scared. He'll make himself the victim." Elsie looked at me, realizing what I was thinking. "You can walk away quietly," she said softly, "or you can let the truth be heard." My eyes hardened. I looked at the dress hanging on the door. It was beautiful, but it felt like a costume now. "I want them to know," I said. "I want everyone to know who he really is." Elsie nodded slowly. "Okay, then we need evidence." She helped me take photos of the texts with my own phone. We printed the worst ones on the hotel printer and folded them small, tucking them deep inside my bouquet. Moments before the ceremony, I was standing in the vestibule, hidden behind a heavy velvet curtain. I was waiting for the cue to walk down the aisle. The guests were being seated. I could hear voices on the other side of the partition. It was Alaric and his best man, Greg. They were laughing. My stomach turned, but I forced myself to listen. "Did you write your vows?" Greg asked. "I was up all night finishing mine for the toast." Alaric laughed, a low, arrogant sound. "Man, I didn't write anything. I totally forgot until this morning." I froze. He forgot. "So what are you going to do?" Greg asked, sounding nervous. "I just Googled romantic wedding vows and picked the first one that popped up," Alaric said. "It's short and poetic. She'll love it. She eats that stuff up." I felt a fresh wave of anger. He couldn't even be bothered to write 3 sentences for me. He had spent hours texting Leora, crafting detailed lies, but for his vows to me, he used a search engine. That was the final straw. Any tiny shred of doubt I had left vanished. He put less effort into our marriage than he did into his cheating. The ceremony began. The organ music started, vibrating through the floorboards. The doors opened and the light from the chapel hit my face. I saw the faces of my friends and family. They looked so happy for me. It broke my heart that I was about to ruin their day, but I knew I was saving myself. I walked down the aisle, step by step, my eyes locked on Alaric. He beamed like nothing was wrong. He looked like the picture of a loving groom. It was terrifying how good of an actor he was. When I reached him, the officiant began his speech about love and loyalty. Every word felt like a lie. Finally, it was time for the vows. Alaric went first. He pulled a crumpled piece of paper from his pocket. "Rosalind," he said, his voice smooth. "You are my sun and my moon. I promise to cherish you in every moment, to be your shelter in the storm." It was generic. It was flat. It was exactly what you would find if you typed wedding vows into a search bar. He finished, looking proud of himself. The guests wiped tears. They didn't know. The officiant turned to me with a warm smile. "Rosalind, your turn." I handed my bouquet to Elsie, but I kept my phone in my hand. The room went quiet, waiting for me to produce a piece of paper or speak from the heart. I took a deep breath. I didn't look at the script I had written weeks ago. That script was for a man who didn't exist. Instead, I looked directly at Alaric. His smile faltered slightly when he saw the phone. "I have something to share," I said, my voice trembling but strong. The microphone picked up every vibration. "I prepared vows," I said to the crowd, "but today I think it's better if I read some messages that truly show the nature of our relationship." Alaric's brow furrowed. He stepped forward slightly. "Rosalind, what are you doing?" I ignored him and unlocked my screen. I read loud and clear. "You said, 'I can't wait to be with you tonight, baby.' She has no idea. I'll just tell her I'm tired and come to your place." I looked up. The silence in the church was heavy, like the air before a thunderstorm. I saw movement in the third row on the groom's side. Leora was sitting there, wearing a pale blue dress. She froze. A collective gasp swept through the room. It started as a ripple and turned into a wave of murmurs. My mother stood up, her hand over her mouth. Alaric's face drained of all color. He looked like a ghost. "Rosalind, stop," he hissed, reaching for the phone. I took a step back. "No," I said loudly. "You didn't stop when you sent this one." I looked back at the screen. "You said, 'Her body is nothing like yours. I have to force myself to touch her.'" Someone in the back dropped a glass. The shatter echoed loudly. Leora stood up abruptly, her face bright red. She looked like she wanted to run, but she was trapped in the middle of the pew. Alaric stammered, looking at the guests, then at me. "Rosalind, please, it's a joke, it's out of context." "Out of context?" I asked. I turned the phone screen toward the audience, showing the photo he had sent her, a selfie of him in the suit he was wearing right now, sent from the bathroom 30 minutes ago. The caption read, "Almost done with the circus act. See you soon." "Here is the proof," I said. "This is your groom." The shock in the room was palpable. My father was walking up the aisle, his face a mask of fury, heading toward Alaric. But I didn't wait for the violence. I didn't wait for the apologies. I was done. I turned to Elsie, who was looking at me with fierce pride, and took my bouquet back. Then I handed it to her again. "Keep it," I said. "I don't need it." I turned on my heel and faced the aisle. The guests were paralyzed. As I began to walk back down the path I had just come from, the crowd parted in silence. No one tried to stop me. I saw pity in some eyes, shock in others, but mostly I saw respect. I held my head high. I didn't cry. I had cried enough in the hotel room. Now I felt light. I reached the heavy oak doors and pushed them open. The sunlight outside was blinding. A wedding photographer who had been capturing the exit was snapping photos rapidly. He lowered his camera as I passed him. "You're trending already," he muttered, looking at his phone. I didn't stop. I walked straight to the vintage car that was supposed to take us to the reception, and I told the driver, just me, "Drive." By the time the car pulled up to my apartment, my phone was blowing up. I had hundreds of notifications. I sat in the back of the car and opened social media. Someone had live-streamed the ceremony. The clip was titled, "Bride Exposes Cheating Groom at Altar." It had thousands of views already. I watched a few seconds of myself reading the texts. I looked stronger than I felt. I scrolled through the comments. "Queen," one user wrote. "Legendary behavior," wrote another. "He deserved it, what a scumbag." It was overwhelming. Strangers from all over the world were rallying behind me. It made me feel less alone. I unlocked my apartment door and kicked off my heels. The silence of my home felt safe. Then my phone rang. It was my mother. I answered, bracing myself. "Sweetheart," she said, her voice shaking. "Are you okay?" "I'm okay, Mom," I said. "Where is everyone?" "We left," she said. "But Rosalind." Alaric's parents just saw the video. They are at the hotel screaming at him. It's a war zone here. I sank onto my sofa, still in my wedding dress. The tulle took up half the living room. I felt a pang of guilt about Alaric's parents. They were good people. They had treated me like a daughter. But then I remembered something. In the text thread, Alaric had mentioned that his mom suspected but didn't want to cause drama. A cold realization washed over me. "They knew about Leora," I whispered to the empty room. They might not have known the extent, but they knew he was straying. And they let me walk down that aisle. The betrayal deepened. It wasn't just Alaric, it was his family too. They were willing to let me live a lie to save face. My phone pinged with a message from Elsie. "You're not going to believe what Leora just posted," she wrote. I hesitated. Did I want to see this? My curiosity won. I clicked the link Elsie sent. It was a screenshot of a Facebook post Leora had made just minutes ago. She was trying to get ahead of the story. The audacity was breathtaking. Leora's post was a long, rambling note titled, "The Truth About Love." She wrote, "We were in love before he ever proposed to her. We tried to fight it, but true love cannot be stopped." She went on to paint me as a villain. She described me as controlling, cold, and emotionally unavailable. She claimed that Alaric stayed with me out of pity because I was so fragile. I stared at the screen, my jaw dropping. She was twisting everything. She was trying to make herself the victim of a love story rather than the participant in an affair. But as I refreshed the page, I saw the comments. The internet was not buying it. People recognized her from the viral video. "You were at the wedding smiling," one person commented. "If you were in love, why did he have to Google his vows to her?" Another pointed out. The tide was turning against her instantly. She had underestimated the public's ability to sniff out a lie. A heavy knock on my door made me jump. I froze. "Rosalind, open up, please." It was Alaric. His voice sounded desperate. I considered not answering, but I needed to end this face-to-face. I walked to the door and opened it, leaving the security chain on. He was standing in the hallway, his tie undone, his hair messy. He looked like a wreck. "Rosalind," he panted. "It was just texting, I swear. I never touched her. It was just a fantasy thing. It meant nothing." I looked at him, feeling absolutely nothing. No love, no hate, just exhaustion. "Open the door, let me explain," he begged. I unlatched the chain and opened the door fully, but I stood in the frame so he couldn't enter. "Just texting?" I asked. "You never touched her," He nodded vigorously. Never, I swear on my life. I stepped aside and picked up my purse from the entry table. I pulled out a piece of paper I had printed at the hotel, a receipt I found in his email trash folder. Then why did you book a hotel room under her name last month? I asked, holding it up. His face dropped. The lie died in his throat. He knew I knew everything. I didn't stop there. I walked to the coffee table where I had dumped the contents of my bag. I picked up the folder Elsie and I had put together. I have the screenshots, Alaric. I have the hotel receipts. I have the call logs showing you talked to her for 3 hours the night my grandmother died. He flinched as if I had slapped him. He slumped against the doorframe, tears streaming down his face. We can fix this, he sobbed. I'll go to therapy. I'll cut her off. Please, Rosalind, don't throw away 3 years. I looked at him, this man who was supposed to be my husband. You can't fix something you Googled your way through, I said coldly. You didn't put effort into us when it was easy. You certainly won't when it's hard. I reached into the folder and pulled out a card my lawyer friend, Petra, had given me months ago for a completely different reason. I handed it to him. My lawyer will be in touch about the apartment lease, I said. Now, get out. He looked at me one last time, seeing the steel in my eyes, and turned away. The next morning, I was sitting in Petra's office. I had changed out of the wedding dress and into jeans and a sweater, but I still felt like I was in a daze. Petra, sharp and professional, was reviewing the documents. She looked up with a small smile. I have good news, Rosalind. I braced myself. What? The wedding was never legally binding, she said. The officiant hadn't filed the marriage license papers yet. He usually does it the Monday after. I felt a massive weight lift off my chest. So I don't need a divorce, I asked. Nope, Petra said, popping the cap back on her pen. No annulment, no divorce, you are legally single. You don't have to go through the court system to separate from him. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. I was free. I didn't have to carry his name or the legal burden of his mistakes. Petra leaned back in her chair and smirked. But, she added, her eyes twinkling, since Leora is posting lies about you online, we can absolutely sue for defamation if she doesn't stop. The war wasn't over yet. Leora, seemingly unable to read the room, posted again. This time she posted a video crying, claiming I had doctored the texts and that I was a jealous, crazy woman. It was pathetic, but some people were starting to believe her. I realized that silence wasn't strength anymore. I had to finish what I started. I sat down with Elsie, and we curated the original, unedited texts, the ones with the timestamps, the phone numbers, and the metadata. I didn't post them on my own page. Instead, I sent them to a popular gossip account that had been covering the viral altar breakup. I attached a simple note. The truth doesn't need a filter. Within an hour, the account posted the evidence. The post went viral, racking up millions of views overnight. The internet sleuths went to work, matching the dates of the texts to dates on Alaric's and Leora's social media. The timeline was undeniable. They were cheating while I was dress shopping. They were cheating while I was writing my vows. The backlash was swift and brutal. Leora's employer, a large marketing firm, was tagged in thousands of comments. People were demanding to know if the company condoned employees who engaged in such unethical behavior, especially since she and Alaric worked for the same parent corporation. 2 days later, the news broke. Leora was fired for violating the company's ethics policy regarding inter-office relationships and public conduct. Alaric wasn't spared either. His company suspended him indefinitely for public conduct damaging to brand image. His LinkedIn was flooded with angry comments. He had built his career on a reputation of trustworthiness, and I had exposed him as a liar on a global scale. Elsie called me that evening, laughing. He just lost his promotion, she said. The one he was supposed to get next month, they gave it to his junior. I didn't laugh. I just felt a sense of grim satisfaction. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about consequences. For the first time, Alaric was facing the results of his own actions. After the storm of the first week, I needed peace. I retreated offline. I deactivated my social media accounts temporarily and went to stay with my sister, Clara, in her quiet suburban home. I spent my days walking her dog and reading books that had nothing to do with weddings. I needed to remember who I was before I was the viral bride. One evening, sitting on Clara's porch, I reflected on everything. I didn't plan revenge, I told Clara. I just wanted to be honest. I couldn't say those vows knowing what I knew. Clara squeezed my hand. That's why people are cheering for you, Rose. You didn't scream or throw things, you just told the truth. Later that night, I checked my email for the first time in days. There was a message from a major TV network producer. The subject line read, "Would you tell your story on camera?" My first instinct was to delete it. But then I thought about Leora's lies. I thought about how many women stay silent. I agreed to the interview. I wanted to control the narrative one last time. I sat in the studio wearing a simple blue dress, not a victim, but a survivor. The interviewer was kind. She asked me why I did it at the altar. "I wanted witnesses," I said calmly. "Gaslighting works best in the dark. I wanted to turn the lights on." The interview aired and went viral again, but the tone was different this time. It wasn't about the scandal, it was about empowerment. The headline read, "The Bride Who Chose Herself." I received thousands of messages from women sharing their own stories of betrayal and how my courage helped them leave toxic relationships. I felt a purpose forming. Then I got a DM from a name I didn't recognize. It was Odalys. I knew that name. It was Alaric's ex-girlfriend from college. The message was short. "He did the same thing to me. Can we talk?" I met Odalys for coffee. She was a lawyer now, sharp and kind. She told me her story. Alaric had cheated on her during their senior year. He had gaslit her, told her she was crazy, and eventually left her for the girl he dated before me. We started comparing dates and timelines. My blood ran cold. Leora wasn't a new fling. According to the dates Odalys had, Alaric had been messaging Leora on and off for years. She overlapped with Odalys and she overlapped with me. Leora wasn't a mistake, she was a fixture, and Alaric's pattern was clear. He needed the security of a good girl at home while he sought excitement elsewhere. "He never changes," Odalys said, stirring her tea. "He just finds new audiences for his performance." I realized then that I hadn't just dodged a bullet, I had dodged a cannonball. His problem wasn't me or the wedding stress. It was him. It was a pathology. Armed with this new knowledge, I felt the final shackle break. I didn't need to feel inadequate anymore. I went home and wrote my own statement. I didn't post it on a gossip site. I posted it on my own blog, which I had just started. I titled the post, "Loyalty Isn't Love." I wrote, "We are taught to stand by our partners, to forgive, to be the bigger person. But silence isn't strength. Ignoring your gut isn't loyalty, it's self-betrayal." I didn't mention Alaric's name. I didn't need to. The message resonated. It was shared thousands of times. The next morning, I checked Leora's profile out of habit. It was gone. User not found. She had deleted all her accounts overnight. The pressure of the truth was finally too much for her. She couldn't spin the story when the evidence, and the other women, were so loud. Months passed. The leaves changed color and the air turned crisp. I was rebuilding my life. I got a new apartment, a new job, and a new sense of freedom. One afternoon, Elsie called me with news. "You know how Alaric and Leora tried to move in together?" she asked. "Yeah. Well, apparently they applied for a luxury apartment downtown. The landlord Googled their names as part of the background check." I started to smile. And the video popped up," Elsie laughed. "The landlord refused to rent to them. He said he didn't want drama in his building." It was poetic karma. The internet never forgets. Alaric had tried to use Google to fake his vows, and now Google was ruining his life. Later that week, I saw an email from Alaric in my spam folder. The subject was foreclosure. He wanted to apologize. He wanted to explain. He wanted me to know he was suffering. I stared at the email. My cursor hovered over the open button. I thought about the man who stood at the altar and lied to my face. I thought about the man who mocked me with his mistress. Did I need his apology? Did I need his version of closure? No. I realized that closure isn't something someone gives you. It's something you give yourself. It's the moment you decide that their opinion doesn't matter anymore. I didn't open the email. I selected it and clicked delete. Then I went to my deleted items and clicked empty trash. It was gone. In my mind, I replayed my walk down the aisle, but this time I didn't see it as a walk of shame. I saw it as a victory lap. I wasn't a broken bride. I was a free woman. I opened my laptop and started a new entry on my blog. I typed the title, "The Ungoogled Bride." A year later, I stood on a beach. The sand was white, and the ocean was a brilliant turquoise. It was the same beach where Alaric and I were supposed to honeymoon. I had canceled the trip back then, but I rebooked it for myself for my 1-year freedomversary. I was alone, but I wasn't lonely. I felt whole. I set up my camera on a tripod and hit record. I wasn't wearing a white dress. I was wearing a bright yellow sundress that danced in the wind. I smiled at the lens, truly smiled for the first time in a long time. He Googled his vows, I said to the camera, the wind catching my hair. But I found my voice. I looked out at the ocean, feeling the salt spray on my face. The nightmare at the altar felt like a lifetime ago. I had turned my pain into power. I turned back to the camera. He read promises, I read truth, and mine set me free. I cut the recording. I didn't need to edit it. It was perfect, just like my life was starting to be.